The second part, of course, was foreseen to be much shorter, and also, let's say, given that we don't have the possibility now to exchange this through a more technological means, let's say, will focus on the essentials. So part of the reflection in the European Union, I think, also has to be, how do we better deal with crisis situations? Because if we look back, then we can see that the European Union was confronted with major crises, more or less without interruption, over the last 10 to 15 years. From the financial crisis 2008, to uncontrolled immigration, to terrorism, and to COVID right now. And let's say in a highly sophisticated system, of course, you try to advance those and have a system in place of strategic planning, of multi-annual programming. And that's exactly what's foreseen in the Lisbon Treaty. In the Lisbon Treaty, there's not only an establishment for annual programming, but also for multi-annual programming of the Union, and the European Commission is tasked to do this. So we have done an exercise in the European Parliamentary Research Service under the leadership of our Director General, Anthony Teasdale, who has been serving before also to leading British ministers like Kenneth Clarke and Geoffrey Howe, and is very experienced. And I've asked them to have a look at how this could be done in a more systematic way. And we try to impact with this on the reflection on strategic planning in the Union. So maybe it is already helpful if even if it's just for anecdotal evidence, I show you some graphs, so to show you a bit what I'm talking about. So we have tried to sort risks in the European Union according to two criteria. A, are they less likely to happen, or are they more likely to happen, or even very likely? One side. And secondly, if they were to materialize, do they only have sectorial impact, which means limited, or do they have general impact and would impact the whole system, which means much more important? So if you take these elements together, then of course we should have a major interest in all those risks which seem to be very likely to materialize and which would have a general impact on the system. So to show this maybe in a more clear overview, we have just isolated this quadrant here on this page. And it shows, when we look at it, of course, on the upper corner, the risks very likely and having an impact on the whole system which are linked to COVID. Of course, that's the health crisis, that's social crisis, and so on. But we see directly below, in the slightly darker area, also questions, for example, of sovereign debt. What does it mean that we are overcoming the crisis now by massively increasing public debt? It's not only the case in the European Union, it's also the case in the United States, it's the case in Britain. In what world will we be afterwards? And we see the political consequences in the gray area just below. So we've tried to identify what are the risks which are very likely to happen and which could have a general impact on the system as a first step. The second question then is, if you try to establish strategic planning capacity, that you ask yourself, okay, if these are the risks, what's our toolbox? And basically the European Union has two elements in its toolbox. A, it has financial and administrative capabilities. We've just about doubled our budget. And secondly, it has regulatory capacity. That means it can legislate. So for areas where we have both, we've put it in green. it means we are well prepared. For areas or risks where we have only one of the two, we put it into yellow, which means we have some preparation and some tools. And for risks where we have neither regulatory capacity nor financial capacity, we put it into red. So from this, it's logical that if you combine the red quadrant on the last one, which is the major risk very likely to happen and with generalized impact, with the red quadrant here, which means there are no regulatory tools and no financial capacity, this is an area where we should be alerted. We have then, in a third step, tried to put together the capacity of the Union per policy field. And we have chosen as a model a pyramid model, which means not ideological. We are not just looking at what is available in the European Union, but also what is available in the member states. So if it's in the member states, if it's functioning, fair enough. If it can be done through interinstitutional, intergovernmental cooperation, fair enough. If it is available in the European Union in some form, fair enough. But maybe it isn't. So they are in green, where it's there, in yellow, where it's on the way, in red, where it's missing. And this for 35 different policy fields. That means this is a necessary precondition to identify the major risks, to identify the missing capabilities, to identify them in every policy field. And when you do that, you have laid a very important precondition for strategic multi-annual planning of the European Union, exactly to address those weaknesses, to fill the gaps. This European Commission has for the first time nominated a vice president responsible not only for annual programming, but also for multi-annual planning and for strategic foresight in the person of Maroš Šefčovič. That means the debate about strategic sovereignty, however we might call this, or open strategic sovereignty, is increasingly underpinned by a planning capacity. And we can also see the different European institutions investing on foresight capacity to accompany those efforts. That's something I wanted to share with you to complement our debate. Thank you.